Hey everyone, Rick Moore, CEO of the Stik Clothing Company, and as we're our clothes are designed to help athletes stay connected to the game that they love and that they've been part of their entire life. And as they transition from one phase of their life to the next phase of their life, our clothing is designed to make sure that that student athlete stays connected to what made them great up until this point and ultimately what will make them great going forward. So as a result of that, we talked to a lot of different folks, and certain themes kept coming up to us about how what are the important things to do when you transition from the sport of lacrosse to the sport of work, right? So how do we take those things that we've learned and make us better for the next 40 years, which is really the most important thing. So on this call or on this meeting, we have Chris Buck, who is, come on, go forward. Who is the CEO of Get It Done Consulting. And what he's really going to focus on, what he's going to be teaching us today is that, there are really 5 different types of student athletes. So we're going to understand a little bit about them, and we all fit into one of those categories and how we use that moving forward. How to take what we've learned from lacrosse and apply it to our career. Then he's going to tell us about motorboats and cork, so I'm not going to spoil that one for you because that's pretty cool. And then, what's the right way to approach this new career? What are some of the do's and don'ts that you need to focus on? And they're probably things that you already know, but we're going to get into that. So I've asked Chris Buck for multiple reasons. One, Chris and I were teammates in college, so there's that natural connection that he and I together have gone through the transition that we're going to be talking about today. But more importantly, Chris has made a career out of being a mental coach for many significant Division I teams, as well as club teams, high school teams, and individual players. Chris is a renowned author. He's written one book called Thinking Inside the Crease, or 2 books, and The Sport of School. And he's done many things throughout his career when he transitioned. So he went from the lacrosse field to a career that he left to ultimately find the career that he loves. So he's one of us. He played at Wilton, he played at Ithaca. We had a great career at Ithaca together, and a great friendship developed from there. So with that said, I want to thank you all for listening for the next 20 minutes or so. I'm going to hand it over to Chris, and he's going to take it from there. Chris, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. The reason I think, why Rick and I have put this together is because I see a lot of student athletes who are graduating from college, and they're not really sure about what to do and how to go about their career choice or what to do once they get there. And there's a lot of do's and don'ts that we'll go over just to point out something to keep in mind as you're going into that next stage. But one of the things that we know is that a lot of our principles and a lot of stuff that we do and our work ethic is, that we apply in sport, that we just need to apply it to that job, whatever that is. And, one of the things that I do is I work with a lot of high school kids on basically taking sports psychology and applying it to their grades so that, it's just human performance. Sports psychology is not taken from sport, it's taken from psychology. And we're just applying it now to that transition period of, what job should we choose? How do we do well in that job? And like I said, what are the do's and don'ts? So one of the things, like Rick had said, I had a career early on when I got out of school where I went to Wall Street because my brothers worked there. And I was there for 11 years. And it was getting to a point where the exchange that I worked on, I was one of those traders on the floor where, with the buy high and sell low kind of stuff with the hand signals. That was me. And through a lot of stress, anxiety, and even a panic attack, I realized, this is not for me. And when it really hit me, I noticed that why I was struggling through all of that was because I didn't have a purpose. It didn't feel authentic to me. It was there, Wall Street is about making money, buy low, sell high. And I didn't have that necessary desire I don't want to call it greed because I don't think it is greed. It's just that desire to just make money. I felt like I was only taking and not giving. So, and there's nothing wrong with Wall Street. Obviously we need it, but for me, was a lack of purpose, a lack of giving back. And so when I really started to figure that out, the turning point, so to speak, was I was sitting in my Series 7 class because I realized I had to take that if I were to go on to another company or whatever it happened to be. And on the third day, we were doing equity derivatives for the third day, and that's what I had traded for 10 years. And I realized I can't do this. I'm not doing this for the rest of my life. And I remember I got up and left about an hour into the class and went home because it wasn't for me. And I wasn't going to live my life like that. So I started to think about, okay, well, what do I like to do? And that's where we're all sitting. And when we're in that, junior, senior year, and by the way, the major you chose might be very specific. If you're a PT major or an AT major, and it's very specific to what you want to do, you probably have a pretty good idea. But if you're an English major, history major, more of a liberal arts major, you're not exactly sure what you want to do. So it's finding the purpose, and that takes a little bit of time and some self-awareness. And so if you really want to think about getting a job or the right job for you, there's two ways to do it. Most people, 99%, when we're coming out of college, we will say, okay, well, what job is open? And can I take that job? Do I want to be a doctor? Do I want to be a mailman? Do I want to be whatever it happens to be, whatever the job is? Do I want to be a automotive technician? It doesn't matter. But is that job available, and can I get it? Okay, and so what you're doing.
Chris, can I just ask a question as you're kind of thinking through this? And, one of the things that, I run into with the Stik Clothing and even, personal interactions with, my kids and their friends and all that kind of stuff is that they choose colleges and majors because they like the color uniform that the school has, or, they're going to go play at the school, or they like the coach treated them well. And they're thinking of lacrosse as its own entity and not thinking of the things that you're talking about here, which is one day that's going to be over, then what? So can you kind of, just as you're going through this, kind of tie back to when you're making those decisions, you have to it's better to find your purpose early than to find your purpose
later. Yeah, it's funny, in college, I only had 2 electives where you could kind of take anything you wanted, and they both happened to be psychology classes. I could take anything. And I wish I had listened to that voice, because I created my own major to go into advertising on the art side. I had a major in art history, studio art, communications, and marketing to go into the advertising world. But there were 2 classes that I elected to take that were psychology courses. And it's that inner person, that inner voice that we really need to listen to. And, whatever your major is, it doesn't even matter as far as what you're going to do for the rest of your life. You're going to have multiple, companies or jobs or careers or whatever it happens to be, but it doesn't have to be the one. Well, I got a major in this, and that's great. Knowledge is great. I don't care what it is in. There's still value. But do you have to be an English teacher if you're an English major? No, you don't. But the value of learning how to write is pretty good. And so
So I was going to say, so what you're really suggesting is that there are little clues that we all have in our younger life of kind of what our purpose is, and what it is that we're going to, and how to apply that to the job that we truly want and love, that gives us that purpose, versus any job that's open.
Yeah. And so Simon Sinek, if you watch any of his stuff, it's all about, knowing your why, right? Know your why. Once you know your why, then you can start to figure out the other stuff. So I think of that as inside out. So most people think outside in. Okay, what's available out there, and then can I fit that spot? Rather than, what I did is I took about 6 to 8 months to think about, okay, what are the things that I just love to do? Regardless if I get paid for it, just what do I like? And I figured out a couple things that were very important in the way I wanted to go into, or why I wanted to go into sports psychology and mental coaching. Was I figured out things like I was a drummer, I was a goalie, I'm a background guy. I do not want to be the lead singer. I have no desire to be that guy. So that was a thing. Okay, that I figured that had to be important. Another one was Oh, totally blanking.
Okay.
Right?
Well, that's all right. Well, maybe you figured out what kind of athlete you were because there are 5 types of athletes that you've identified. And that probably dragged you into, not dragged you, kind of led you with those background kind of things into where you are today.
That's true.
So
Okay.
can we talk about the 5 types of athletes and how those 5 types of athletes kind of translate into the next phases of our life?
Sure. So over the last 10 years, I've been working with, hundreds of student athletes along the way. And one of the things that I found was these categories where you could see natural tendencies for each type of student athlete. And it ultimately came down to about 5. And they're not mutually exclusive, but there can be some overlap. But for the most part, I could chunk certain athletes or specific athletes into these categories. And so, the workhorse, the rookie, the spectator, the natural talent, and the intellectual athlete. So the workhorse goes hard on and off the field. We know what a workhorse is in the athletic world, right? Rick was a workhorse on the field.
Yeah.
They're the guys and girls that go to the gym regularly. They make sure that they're bigger and faster and stronger than everybody else. They go to practice early and stay late, either like to work extra drills or whatever they have to do to build their skill set. They're always putting in the time, and they stay in the present. They just go hard no matter what they're doing, whether it's weight room, diet, school potentially. The workhorse is sort of an easy one to see. You can see them working hard. Okay, the second one is the rookie. Okay, and the rookie could be similar to a workhorse, and they may work hard, but for the most part, they just don't know the rules. They don't know the standards and the norms of what is acceptable. And, one way to recognize, that, first of all, like a freshman, right? Or first year, whatever college you go to. And in that world, you had to learn the rules. Even if you just went to your dorm for the first night, you just didn't know the rules. You're a rookie just by de facto, it's just the way it is. So in the same way, whether you're playing a new sport or going to a new job, you just got to know the rules. So you're potentially going to be a rookie, and knowing that you could be a rookie, there's a way, we want to start to make sure that we prepare.
So may I ask, Chris, so like when someone's a rookie, and I'm thinking about, this is really a brilliant analysis, we're rookies many times in our lives, right? So you're a rookie when you're first on the summer league team. You're a rookie when you're on your first high school team, college. You're a rookie when you are, for some people, a first-time parent, right?
First boyfriend, girlfriend. Yeah.
Right. As a rookie, we're always kind of going into, if we're pushing our boundaries, which most student athletes are doing in many cases, I can see, you're going to repeat the rookie understanding the norms over and over and over again throughout the course of your life.
Yeah. And here's one thing to keep in mind, that, the rookie wants to do well. Look, Derek Jeter was a rookie one year, right? So, I mean, he obviously wants to do well, but it's the idea that, like, we're not necessarily sure of how you fit in the larger picture until you're in the picture.
Right.
And so just understanding what are the norms, what are the rules. And, that could be for every team that you go to, whether it's in college or in high school. Can you show up late? Is that okay? Can you skip a practice? Who talks at meetings? Who cheers, or who talks to the team before a game or after, or whatever happens to be? Are freshmen allowed to, assert their power if they're on the field? Can only people that play talk?
Right.
There's so many things that you just learn that we don't even think about. But, as a rookie, all these things you're computing all the time, whether you notice it or not. It's just, okay, what are the rules here?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Now you have the spectator.
The spectator is someone who's just going through the motions. I certainly have been guilty of this. Probably in Wall Street, I was probably guilty of this. Can perform well, but does not try to improve and lacks a personal vision. And that's the key for the spectator. The spectator just is there. They just are getting grades. They're just going to class. They're just at work. They're punching in at 9 and punching out at 5 o'clock. It's just, they're just watching. I say the spectator because they're sort of watching their life go by. There's no personal vision that they're striving to attain, to make a reality, rather than, we'll just see what happens.
Right. And I would imagine even the spectator may be a spectator as an athlete, but in other aspects of their life, they're not a spectator, right? So it's,
Yeah.
so the set is the sense that, I could be a spectator or a rookie in one part of my life, but in another part, I'm a workhorse or so on and so forth.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. The spectator and the workhorse actually don't work together, right? You could be a workhorse and a rookie, but a workhorse and a spectator, probably not. Because the workhorse is usually working towards something, is driven. And we'll talk about more of that when we talk about motorboats and courts. But the spectator is really just watching it go by. They're not driven towards something. They're not focused on putting their effort into creating something bigger and better for their own lives. They're just sort of there.
Right.
Which is fine. You don't have to always have it. It's just sort of the way it is.
Right. Got it. Okay. Awesome. That's cool. And then you have here the natural talent.
The natural talent to me is the most interesting because they possess the God-given talent. They make everything look easy. We all know these guys, right? I've had clients. One of my clients is one of the best offensive players in the country, in high school certainly, and then now in college, on the Tewaaraton list, the whole thing. And he just does everything easily. And the natural talents of the world, they can just amaze us with how quickly they pick things up, how they'll always be on the field practicing and shooting or whatever it happens to be, whatever position they play. Then that's what is comfortable to them, is playing, so to speak. The issue with the natural talent, which I never would have thought of, is they don't know how to work. Because everything is so easy that they never had to work at things.
Right,
so
right.
For the natural talent, let's say you have a natural talent who can do, let's say, let's take an offensive player, let's say, attackman, for example. And if the attackman works on shooting and question marks and split dodges or whatever it happens to be, that's just comfortable. That's what they like. But right. You say, okay, you got to get stronger. You got to get in the weight room. And it's like,
right.
They're not used to that. And the same holds true for someone who's naturally gifted. This happens all the time. I can do science and math, but I can't do history and English.
Right, right.
And that's because they don't know how to work at it. Because it just comes easy to do science and math.
So do you find that the natural talent, when they transition to the sport of work, unless they find a role where they are just a natural talent at that as well, that could be a detriment if you don't recognize that you never had to work at the things that you've done. Not say you never had to work, but things came easier, more gifted.
Yeah, I would say for the natural talent, it's really, really important to make sure that you find your purpose first, so that work seems like play. And really, like if you identify as a natural talent, first of all, good for you. But secondly, it's going to be about understanding, or the self-awareness, that I'm not necessarily the hardest worker. And say, okay, fine. When I get to this first job, I understand that work, just doing work, which potentially your first job is what they're going to want you to do. It may seem menial. It may seem, beneath us or whatever it happens to be. But if we don't recognize that we have those tendencies, then you might fall into that trap and be seen as lazy or not willing to do it or whatever happens to be. So the natural talent's really, really important. It's really interesting, the natural talent, in my mind, because it's the opposite of what I would have thought.
Right.
They like to play.
Right. Okay, cool. And now you've identified the intellectual athlete.
The intellectual athlete wants to go to, an Ivy League school, regardless of, of the lacrosse or not. They have what we call a high psychological set point. They expect a lot. They want to make a lot of money. They want to have prestige. They want to be a doctor or whatever it happens to be. So they, have this drive that's just inside them, whether it was conditioned or natural, who knows, right? But it's there. They're driven to succeed. Successful people are willing to do the things that other people aren't. And they're sort of in that realm. The issue with the intellectual athlete is they start to become perfectionists. And then in perfectionism, you raise your anxiety. And so what I say is, the deficit between reality and perfect is anxiety.
Right.
And so you know, the intellectual athlete is going to be, may not take a job, or if it's not the perfect job.
Right.
They're not willing to just try.
Would you suggest that maybe there are types of careers, and one thing that's just popping to my mind as you speak, so for instance, an accountant, right? An accountant has to be a perfectionist because the numbers are the numbers and they have to be right, and they can't, there's no sway factor, if you will,
Sure.
right? Whereas, let's say, a marketing director is more subjective, it's creative, it's not this, you know, there's not this, okay, if you do X, then Y will happen and Z will be the result. Would you suggest that if, as you identify as one of these 5 types of athletes, there are probably careers, I would think, that have accountabilities or job descriptions that sort of mirror what type of person you are?
It could be. It certainly could be. The way I would look at it, though, if I were an intellectual athlete, I would think more of, you know, the career or the specific job they're taking. Is that good enough? I don't know if I can take that job. I don't know if I can do it as well as I want. See, one of the things about perfectionism is you don't try new things. Because how can you be good at it or perfect it if you've never done it before? Exactly. And so, you know, that I think would be, you know, certainly I think that if you are out of your comfort zone so much and you're the intellectual athlete, you're the perfectionist, so to speak, then that might be a little more, you know, that's going to be more intimidating than if you took something in your comfort zone, but recognize that it doesn't have to be that particular company or that specific job. Gotcha. You know, understanding that it's a career in general.
Gotcha. So here you're in this slide is, you know, is you're identifying that there are people who may have looked at these 5 things, Taylor and Will. I'm curious to hear the story. Tell us the story of Taylor and Will and what you found or what they found as they transitioned from the field to off the field.
Yeah. So Taylor is one of the guys that I worked with, actually the start of the genesis of the Sport of School, the book that I wrote. And, you know, we'll all understand this. So he said he wanted to gain 10 pounds of muscle before the start of the lacrosse season, which is only like 2 months away. And I said, well, okay, it's a pretty high test, but who am I to say, you know, no, you can't do it. I'm not here to crush dreams. So we went in the weight room and he was doing lat pull down. He did 10 and he stopped. And I said, what are you doing? He goes, oh, that was 10. I was like, whoa. You got more in you. And he's like, okay. So he did 3 more. And I'm like, keep going. And he did 3 more. He ended up doing 18. And so we did that every day for like 2 weeks and just kept pushing and kept pushing. You got more in the tank. You got more in the tank. And he would push and push and push and stay in the present and go really hard. And he was running in the 600 at that time. It was indoor track season. And he was going into the 4th and final lap. And he said, oh, I'm dying. And he goes, wait, I got more in the tank. And he took off. And his previous PR was
What's a PR, just so we know?
Oh, a personal record.
Got it.
So his previous PR was a 137. In that race, he ran a 128.
Wow.
It's incredible to be able to do that. And he came in first, by the way.
Wow.
And so it's just a change in attitude. He didn't get physically stronger, but it was this idea that I always have more in the tank. And the other thing that stuck with him was I said, look, every day there's someone out there working harder than you. Don't let that happen. And he has taken that and run with it. I mean, so he is now working, you know, in Wall Street, and every day he still thinks about someone out there working harder than him. He's got, you know, his licenses. He's really doing well, and he just thinks about how hard can I work today, and that's been going on 10 years.
So what he really took, or what I'm hearing, is the things that you taught him or worked with him on inside the line stuff, right? Getting ready for lacrosse season,
sure.
Stronger and faster, and all those kinds of things. Really, you were there to his goal was to get 10 pounds of muscle for lacrosse season. But what you really gave him was a personal best record in track, right? Which you weren't there to really do, but the concepts. So and then therefore it sounds like what Taylor did was he took those same concepts and applied it to his career with his purpose on Wall Street, and has, use that to his probably great benefit at this point in time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow, great. Awesome.
And Will was a guy that could work hard, but it wasn't all the time. He certainly would do it on the field, but not as much in the classroom. And so we worked on just working hard in everything you do. You just become a hard worker. You don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to be the smartest. It's irrelevant as long as you work hard. And he ended up going to college and playing at a pretty good D1 school. He was, he was starting there for 2-3 years, and he just would outwork everybody, and he became his identity. And he would say, he would walk up around campus and without saying it out loud, but he would pick people out and say, I work harder than that guy.
Right.
I work harder than them. And that became his thing. And so once he got to his job, he was at a national conference, maybe the first 6-8 months that he was at that job. And I said, do you still do the stuff that we talked about? And he said, oh yeah. He goes, these guys, I'm going to outwork every one of these guys. I'm just going to outwork you. And he closed this major deal the day before, and he did another one the next day. And he said, I don't have to be the smartest guy. I'm just going to outwork everybody. And it became just his persona that he could grab onto and find confidence in that. And it's amazing how, from 6-8 years prior, he's still doing the same stuff and understands the principles that made him so good.
So what you're saying is, many people think that, when I get to be quote unquote an adult and I'm out in the workforce, that's when I'll figure this stuff out. But really, it's okay because it happens to many people. But if you can take as a student athlete, kind of understand who you are and how you operate in this situation, it'll help you choose the right situation going forward, right? And when you choose that right situation and apply the principles that you've learned in the sport of lacrosse or preparing for lacrosse, and we're not, and I think, just to digress a second, we're not defining success as you got to be rich and you got to be, no, it's about what you want out of your life and your happiness. And for some people, it might be making a lot of money. For other people, it might be painting a beautiful picture, and anywhere in between.
Well, and I would say fulfilling that personal vision, right? And that's where the spectator doesn't know what to work on because they don't see it.
Right.
So they don't have that value of being, they're not motivated by whatever that personal vision is that you want to make sure it's a reality. So these guys started to, really understand, what I want, and I'm going to work my ass off, pardon the French,
right,
to go get it done.
Nice. No, that's awesome. So from there, Will and Taylor and some of these other concepts, you've identified that there are two. Even though there's 5 types of athletes, there are 2 general types of people. Can you share with us what?
Yeah, and this is something I picked up a long time ago in a book, and I forget who said it. I'm not even sure if I'm exactly right, but this is sort of my interpretation of it, is that there are 2 types of people in the world. There's motorboats and corks. And motorboats create wakes. Corks just float around in those wakes. And the key, when you think about this, as whether you were a student athlete, you played in college, even in high school. But if you were working really hard to win state championships or national championships or even conference championships, you were a motorboat. You were driven. You had fuel to get to a specific destination. You were pushing with energy towards a location, right? Corks are just lost in the current, similar to the Spectator, like we talked about earlier. And so the motorboats are the ones that create those wakes. They have the fuel. Corks don't have any yet.
Right.
And so it's, okay, what is your personal vision? That's what creates the fuel, right? And then I'm going to work just like I did for the last 4 years in college or whatever it happens to be.
Right.
That all that stuff is the same. It's just, it's a new conference championship. It's a new national championship. It's just, okay, I'm going to put all that energy into where I want to go.
It's interesting. What's coming to my mind right now, this is crazy. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But is the movie Forrest Gump.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And Forrest Gump, and thinking about this whole presentation and the whole time you're talking, Forrest Gump was trying to figure out who was right. Was it Lieutenant Dan who said you need to be a motorboat and have a destiny and you're driving towards it, or was it his mom who said, life is like a box of chocolates. You just never know what you're going to get, and you're kind of floating in between. And I think I don't know if that's a perfect analogy, but that's what's coming to my mind. And I think so many people want to be motorboats, but they don't know what to do, so they remain as corks. And that's you said expectations versus reality, and there in between there lies anxiety. I think that for a lot of folks is, how to figure out to put the fuel in the engine, say, this is where I'm going, this is my personal vision, this is what I want to be and how I want to accomplish it, versus, gee, I'm hoping I stumble on the right place and it makes sense for me.
Yeah, and the key with that is to really be self-aware, and you can work on being self-aware.
Right.
What do you want? I have had meetings where I meet with someone, every week for an hour, and the beginning of that meeting for 5 weeks was a question: what do you want? And she didn't know, and that's okay. But until we figure that out,
right? What do you want?
You're not gonna know. And so, the same thing for me. Okay, I could do anything I wanted when I was leaving Wall Street, because I wasn't bound to, and a wife and kids and house. I didn't have all that stuff, so I could do anything. So what do I want? Well, I want to be social. I want to fix problems. I want to help people. I want to be communicative and work with others and be social, that way. Those are the things that I wanted. And then I narrowed down what I wanted to do. Okay, well, I want to go into sports psychology. I want to go into golf psychology. Therefore, I'm going to go to grad school for 2 years and figure the rest out. But without the vision, without the awareness of what I want,
right?
I wanted versatility. I wanted freedom to be able to not have to go to one cubicle every day.
Right.
That was what I wanted. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's what I wanted.
Right. You kind of went back to what's your personal vision, and then with no personal vision, you are automatically destined to be a cork. Sure. To become a motorboat, you have to have some level of personal vision, and for everyone, it's different, right? There's no right or wrong answer. I want to live in a mansion, or I want to live in a house big enough just that's comfortable. There's no right or wrong. It's what is your vision. Yeah, I want to go to Wall Street, or I want to go to the Peace Corps. I mean, there's no wrong vision. I mean, both of those are great. Yeah. So probably for folks that are listening to this and who are sensing that they're corks, probably should be reaching out to you. And I want to make sure we give your contact information at the end of this, because to your point, the first 5 weeks you're talking, what do you want? Helping people create that personal vision, I think, is invaluable. Yeah. So in here you're identifying what makes an athlete great, or what makes great athletes. So walk us through quickly some of these terms, and as I look at them, just to kind of give you a second to collect your thoughts, as I look at them, when you say them just as words, they're just words, but when you tie them back to your concepts of the 5 types of athletes, the 2 types of people, these take on a very different meaning, a much more meaningful meaning, in my opinion. So if you could share with us kind of your thoughts here. Well, if we look at this list, right, what makes a great athlete? So focus on the task at hand, right? They're very focused on the present tense. That they have drive, and they're driven to improve every day. They work hard. Those are the teams that really start to excel, right? They're disciplined, able to stay on strict schedules. And we all know that if you've been through 4 years of college lacrosse, that you had to get up early for lift, or you had to get up at 5 a.m. to get the plane. Whatever happened to be, you have determination to do it, right? Commitment. It's not a sometimes thing. It's an all the time thing. You can't sometimes want to work hard. And it'll be driven into you that you got to work hard every day. And we also know from the best athletes in the world that that's what they do. They're constantly committed to their personal vision, by the way, and that they know that it's not a sometimes thing. Mm-hmm. Vision. They're clear about what they want to accomplish, right? It's the same stuff that we've been talking about. And aggressiveness. They make moves on their own. So they're not purely reactionary, that they're, someone who's aggressive. Let's take a midi, for example, right? That guy who can do a bull dodge at the same time do a split, all in one set.
that guy is deciding what he's going to do rather than purely, reacting to what the situation is or what the defender is giving him.
So when you identify aggressiveness, you're not just identifying, going after the ball. You're identifying aggressiveness as a personal trait, which is, I'm going to be in control. I'm going to dictate this tempo as aggressiveness rather than, I'm going to fight you tooth and nail to get that ball.
No. It's certainly not fighting other people, but it's more about fighting for what you want. And obviously in an ethical way and in a way that's, of good character and integrity. But, being aggressive in your choosing your movements. And so if we were to take this list and say, okay, what makes a great employee? Focus, drive, discipline, determination. If you go back, all those things apply. There's no difference. You did them every day for 4 or 8 years, whatever it happens to be. And, that's what made you a great athlete. So if you think about what makes a great employee or a great worker, whatever you want to call it, is all these things. Because we've all had the guy on the team or the girl on the team that, goes out there and is just there.
Right.
It drives you nuts because you're working really hard, so what both sides of that are like. And you know that if you're the one that works hard and you've done this, by the way, recruiters and people that are hiring love athletes because they already have these things. What I'm saying is turn it back on yourself and just be aware like, oh man, I have done this because that's what I wanted. So once I get into an industry, whatever, I don't even care what the career is. If you follow these things, you already have them.
Yeah.
Just applying to the next stage, which makes you so much more prepared than the average person as a student athlete.
Yeah, and I just think of so many people who we've all heard the stories of the guy or gal who graduated college and on May 16th, graduation was May 15th. On May 16th, they look up and go, okay, now what, right? Mm-hmm. And maybe they have more control and power and knowledge of what they need to do than they really even know. It just needs to be reinforced that these things that they already know are the things that are going to work for you.
Yeah. And again, it goes back to that self-awareness. Oh, I already have these things. So I'm going to treat whatever job I get like I have lacrosse.
There you go. So what are in this slide here, and I know that you have a picture of Brown University. Obviously, it's near and dear to your heart. You've done mental coaching for Brown University as well as others. So I think you've kind of taken people who have reached kind of the pinnacle of the sport, the pinnacle of schooling. Mm-hmm. And I'm imagining that many of them will reach the pinnacle of their life using the concepts that you've identified as, the 5 types of student athletes, the motorboats and corks, and what makes those athletes great as athletes and how they use them going forward.
Right. So in working with the team in 2016, when they went to the Final Four, we became all about focusing on the present and going as hard as you can and as fast as you can. We didn't care what the score was. It was never relevant. And so in that semifinal game against Maryland, when they were down by 4 with 6.5 to go, no one thought about, oh, we're going to lose this. It's just, you're just conditioned to go as hard as you can. And, they came back to tie it with 1.5 minutes left. So they scored 4 goals in 5 minutes. And it's the same idea of like, we just work hard. That's all we do. Stay in the present. Don't worry about results. And so if we talk about what makes people great in general, in my mind, is you have to have a high work ethic, which they obviously did. But people will say work smart, not hard. I don't agree with that. I don't think that you can get to success, real success for yourself without working hard. It's just the way it is. I don't think you can avoid that one unless you create a widget that everybody wants by accident.
Right. But I would even say that to digress a little bit here on this, people who work smart work hard, how to work hard first to get to understand what smart is. So working hard is still a major component of anything that you need to do.
Right. And that goes back to the rookie idea.
Right.
You just work hard until you figure it out. That's a good point. So the ability to solve problems, right? So, I know that, of the people that I know who, run companies or are in a decision-making position to hire or fire people, that if you can solve problems, they want you. That's just a fact, right? Because if you can work hard and work hard at solving problems, now you're someone that is a high commodity, right? So I talk about, when I'm working with high school student athletes about, algebra. Algebra is just a language for solving problems. And if you can work hard at solving the problem, because knowing sine, cosine, and tangent isn't necessarily going to help you.
You just brought me back.
Exactly. And so if you understand that it's not about algebra, but about solving problems, and you can put work ethic into solving those problems, now you're someone who can really be successful in life because you know how to work hard and you know how to solve problems. So I think that's what makes people great in the workforce, right? I mean, you look at Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and you name it. All the guys that have incredible success have solved problems for a lot of people.
Right.
And again, you don't have to be on that level, but
those are the easy examples to understand.
Exactly, right. And then lastly is the intellectual curiosity. You got to be willing to learn. If you're not, you're just going to stay inside what Carol Dweck calls we'll talk about this later, but a fixed mindset, that you're just going to stay in this little circle, and then you're never going to get outside where you currently are. And that's where growth happens.
Interesting. So here you have the do's and don'ts. So is this kind of what you were referencing?
Yeah, exactly. We'll get to it. So don't show up late. If you have your first job, don't do it, right? And don't leave early.
Right.
Especially, when you're a newbie and you're learning the rules, that kind of thing. See how late your boss stays. Get in before them every day, right? Work hard every day. Always come in early and always stay late. If you want to, if you want to move forward. I mean, if you want to punch a clock, that's fine, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about going to the next level, right? So you want to make sure that you're not the newbie who is even perceived as being sluggish or lazy or whatever happens to be, because that's a killer, okay? Don't act entitled, right? Be humble. Do be humble and have a growth mindset, right? So if you act entitled like someone owes you this, the people who have worked there for years will see it right away. And it's a big turnoff.
Right. Well, I would even just imagine, just think about, we all know kids, athletes, student athletes, high school kids that were the stars of their team. And for their whole life growing up, they were the natural talent, and everyone wanted to have them on the team, and they were the first kids picked for the kickball match and blah, blah, blah. It's almost difficult for them to not act entitled as they go to the next level. I think that's probably something they need to be self-aware, to use your term, and recognize early on that, they don't want to do it when they become the rookie at the next phase of their life, whether that be a college team or their next job. Yeah,
and that's a good point, to recognize that you are going to be the rookie, and be humble about that. Be interested in learning more. Understand that no one knows you, and it's a new thing. You got to learn the rules, and to have a growth mindset, which means you're always trying to learn. You can always improve. You don't have it all yet, and even if you did, you want to start to just think about, okay, maybe I don't have it all, and what else do I need to know in order to improve, get better, or whatever happens to be.
Great. And then finally, don't be disgruntled, huh?
Don't be the disgruntled, the bitter, disgruntled employee, right? That, this is the worst, and my boss hates me, and we don't get time off, and all that kind of stuff. That can be a big turnoff as well, especially early on. If you're there for 4 or 5 years and you're not happy with that particular company, then that's a different story. But when we're starting off and we're getting that new job, don't be the disgruntled guy or girl. Make sure that it's an opportunity to learn. You got a long time in the workforce. You don't have to be, making judgments within the first couple months.
Right. If you're a freshman and you're a freshman on the team, and you're already talking about the coach is a jerk and I hate the coach, that's a disgruntled employee. If you haven't earned the right, is the way I look at it, to be disgruntled, and it gets smoked out pretty quickly.
Right. That's a good way. Yes, that's a good way to look at it. So this is one thing, if you go back up, treat your company like it's your company. So one of the things that I think about is, if I ever worked for a big company, I would want to think about it like it's my company. So how can I make this company better? Like, how do we get to bigger profits or bigger production or whatever it happens to be? I don't know what career you're going into, but what would I do Because I think a lot of times if we think of ourselves as the employee and that's it, you sort of get stuck into that one role. But if you're thinking about, again, going back to solving problems, if the owner or the president or whoever it is sees you as someone who can solve problems, who's thinking outside the box, now that doesn't mean run in and tell them that you have to do this. But if you just treat it that way and you act that way, okay, this is, if this were my company, I would want my employees in this position to act as such. I think that's a better way than, well, I'm the low man on the totem pole, so I don't get a say.
Right,
or
right.
I'm not going to start thinking about, you know, other things. I'm just going to do my work.
Huh. Well, Chris, I mean, clearly, you know, the Stik Clothing Company is a clothing company, but what you're really saying is that the people who are buying our clothing, there's so much more. And every person that you touch, a student athlete, every time that someone buys one of your, and I'm going to say awesome books because I've read them all, you're giving people really the keys to the kingdom, if you will. You're giving them, you're helping them understand that what they already know is really what they need to know, but what they need to understand is how to apply those things in different situations, right?
Yeah.
So I really want to thank you for spending this time with us and giving it to us, because I think the words that you say, and more importantly, the way that you say them, are really invaluable to almost anyone who's entering another phase of their life, no matter what that may be, right? So it could be, you know, a high school student athlete going to college. It could be a college getting their first job. Or it could be some old person like you or me who in the middle of their career decides to change their job.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, I was doing X, Y, and Z, and I'm not happy doing it. I want to do A, B, and C. You're going to go through these same things again, so that understanding these, I don't want to say coping mechanisms, but these tools or these self-awareness concepts are what you'll need for every aspect of your life, probably till the day you're no longer on this earth. I mean, really. I mean, think about it. Could be a parent who goes from being a parent to now is a grandparent. That's a different set of rules that need to be followed. You become the rookie again. How do I interact as a grandparent? So it really applies to almost every aspect of your life. So I just want to say that I hope that by listening, everyone really, you know, that the things that Chris has told us about, people really take to, and I think they will. And I put Chris's contact information here, and you can see here. I think it's important that folks who are going to the next phase of their life, or maybe they don't have their personal vision, or really just want to understand what type of athlete they may be so that they can use it going forward, I highly encourage them to get in touch with Chris, understand what he can help them do. And really, I've seen him do it with himself as a friend of his, and I've seen him do it with other student athletes as their mental coach and teams as well. So he's a terrific resource. Chris, I really want to thank you and appreciate all the time you spent with us here today. And, you know, my hope is that because you've written various books and various topics, that we can do this again in the near future and bring this to folks out there that may need it.
Absolutely. I appreciate you having me.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Have a great day. Again, this is Rick Marr, the Stik Clothing Company. We appreciate you listening. Have an awesome day, everybody. Love lax, dress lax.